Perfect. Well, we might kick off. So, hi and welcome everyone. And for those of you who I haven't met, I'm Alicia McDonald. I'm a partner here at Airtree, and welcome to today's Going Global session. So, at Airtree, our mission is to really write one of the first checks into a company that will hopefully go on to become a global household name. And obviously, that's no mean feat. So, our job is to help accelerate that journey, remove some of the obstacles along the way, and hopefully make it a little less bumpy. There's a bunch of stuff that we do behind the scenes to support our portfolio with this. But for us, it's really important that we're also helping grow and support the broader startup ecosystem along the way. And that's why we're all here this morning for this session. So, as I mentioned, this session is part of our Going Global series, which is to help you expand overseas and build a world-class business right from the beginning of your journey. If you missed the last session, we can pop the links into the chat so you can check them out a little bit later. But for today's session, we're thrilled to be joined by April Dunford. April, thank you so much for joining us. April is the foremost authority on product positioning and best-selling author of Obviously Awesome, which we know many founders and startup operators consider the industry Bible on product on positioning. And she's recently published her new book, Sales Pitch, taking the lessons learned from working with hundreds of companies to share a better way to pitch and sell their product. So just some housekeeping before I hand over to April. Thanks to everyone who pre-submitted questions. We've had some excellent questions come through and quite a few, which is great. We will cover them at the end if they aren't already covered by April in her session. And we'll also save some time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to submit questions throughout. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat box, and I'll add that to the end of the conversation after April's presented. So on that note, without further delay, I might hand over to April. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, great. Thanks. Great to be here. I've got a presentation and I'm going to do that too. And then we'll take questions after. The presentation is really focused on my second book, which is really around sales pitches. But in the question session, if we want to talk about positioning or ask a question about anything and everything, I'm totally cool with that. Let me just share the screen and see if this works. Can everybody see that? Does that look good?
Perfect.
Okay, great. All right. So, this is a talk about how to craft a sales pitch to stand out and win. So most of us in startup land will agree that selling is hard. In fact, a lot of folks that I meet that run startups come from the product side of the house, and selling doesn't necessarily come natural to us. But unfortunately, we have to get good at it. Otherwise, we don't get to stay in business. A product that nobody uses is a failure. So but that's not actually what I want to talk about today. I actually want to turn it around a little bit and look at it from a customer's perspective. And so I'm going to say something that's maybe a little controversial, but I think buying is hard. Buying is hard. Now, sometimes when I say this, people look at me and they get this look on their face and they're like, no, it ain't, April. It's not hard. That's called shopping, and that's easy. I wish that was my job. I wish that's all I had to do was just go shopping for things all the time. And it's true. Like some things, when we think about it, are really fun to buy. Like I like buying a t-shirt. I like buying a pair of shoes. I like buying a drink at a bar. But then there are other things that we can think of that are actually distinctly not easy or fun to buy. Like who likes buying insurance? Nobody does. And if you think about it, a lot of things that we buy for businesses are actually incredibly hard things to buy. So I'm going to give you a stupid example that has nothing to do with technology. And then I'm going to give you a less stupid example that does have to do with technology, but you totally like hang with me on this one. All right. This story is called April Buys a Toilet. Trust me, this goes somewhere. So it's called April Buys a Toilet. So here's the thing. I live in Toronto. Toronto is famous for having old, terrible houses. I buy one of these old, terrible houses, and in it is kind of an old, terrible bathroom. So I hire a guy to come fix the bathroom. He comes to me and he says, April, you need to buy a new toilet. And I said, okay, I've never bought a toilet before, but how hard can that be? So I go to the toilet store to buy my new toilet, and I walk in and the sales rep comes and he says, can I help you? And I said, yes, you can. I'm here to buy a toilet. And he said, what kind of toilet do you want? And I'm like, one that flushes? I don't know. Like, what kind of, like, how hard can this be? And the guy says, oh, look, lady, the toilets are all over there. Go back there, have a look at them. They got the prices on them and the feature list. And then you just decide which one you want. Then you come back and tell me, and then I'll say the toilet. I say, okay. So I walk over to this section where all the toilets are, and here's what I see. 9,000 million toilets, and they all look exactly the same, but they are not the same. In fact, some of them cost $100 and some of them cost $1,000. And each of them has this little sticker on it. And there's all these features, and none of these features make any sense to me at all. So there's things like trapways and flappers and gravity assist, something or other. And I'm standing there reading all these things, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't actually know enough to buy a toilet. So I do what any sensible person would do. And I go back home and I start Googling it. And it turns out toilets are full of technology. There's all these things. There's water efficiency and seat height and single and dual flush technology. And there's these flappers. I still don't know what those are. And there's all these trapways. And then I learned the most disgusting thing about toilets, which I am now going to teach to you. There is a score. It's called the MAP score. This stands for maximum performance. Yeah, that's the amount of solid waste that a toilet can handle in a single flush. 350 to 600 grams is good, but some toilets can handle up to 1,000 grams, which is 2.2 pounds. It's like a little dog. At this point, I'm like, this is disgusting. I now know all kinds of stuff about toilets that I wish I didn't know. I'm a busy person. I run a business. I got kids. I got a dog that doesn't need to be flushed. And I'm like, I don't have time for this toilet stuff. So then I get this genius idea. You know what? Maybe I don't have to buy a toilet at all. Maybe, you know what? The old one was working just fine. It's old, it's not perfect, but, maybe I could just keep it, and then I don't have to worry about doing this right now. And whenever it breaks or whatever, I'll come back and I'll buy a new toilet then when I'm not in the middle of a big renovation project. And so what happened? I spent 3 weeks. I went to the showroom twice. I spent what felt like infinity on the internet. And how many toilets did I buy? 0. Now, I'm not saying that buying your artificial intelligence, next generation database doodad thing is just like buying a toilet. In fact, I'm saying it's worse. It's actually way worse than buying a toilet. So let's think about it. If you sell a B2B thing, let's say you sell a B2B thing. Let's say it's something like accounting software. How does that actually get bought? Let's think about it from a customer's perspective. Accounting software. Vice president of finance wakes up in the morning and she's like, man, we're in the middle of an audit. You know, it sucks. My accounting software sucks. Does she go looking for new accounting software to buy? No, she's busy. She doesn't have time for that. She goes in the office, she looks around and she says, you, controller, Joey, figure out what accounting software we should buy. The stuff we're using now is terrible. Go look at this stuff and figure out what accounting software I should buy. Now, how's Joey feeling? He's pissed. He doesn't know anything about accounting software. He uses accounting software, but he's never purchased accounting software before. He doesn't know what the state of the art of accounting software is. He doesn't know who the vendors are. He doesn't know what his list of criteria should be. So what does he do? He looks it up. And what does he see? 9,000 million packages of accounting software. And so he's going on to review places like G2 Crowd, and there's a top right quadrant, and there's 30 vendors in there. And some of them are for big companies, and some of them are for little companies. They all kind of look the same. He's looking at Gartner quadrants. He's looking at Lumascapes. He's looking at all this stuff. And all these things look the same. And they're listing all kinds of features that he knows nothing about. And he's starting to kind of stress out. Maybe he clicks that button on your webpage that says, give me a demo. And then what happens? Oh, your sales rep is so excited. That's great. And we got a live one. Sit over there, Joey. I'm coming into the demo. I'm your sales rep. Step into my wind tunnel of features. And that's generally what we do. A product walkthrough. There's 49 drop-down menus, and I'm going to click on every single one and talk to you about every single feature in this product. Here's a feature, here's a feature, here's a feature, here's a feature, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. Joey's sitting there and he's like, I don't know, man. Are these features important? I don't know. Does everybody have these features, or do just you have these features? What exactly is the value of any of these features? Are all these features appropriate for companies like me? I don't know. And so Joey's feeling overwhelmed. And you know what else? Joey's super stressed because for Joey, there are stakes involved in this decision. And in fact, making a bad decision, that's bad. Like bad things could happen. So like if Joey makes a recommendation to his boss and his boss thinks it's stupid, now he's going to look stupid in front of a boss. Maybe he recommends an accounting software and the whole team hates it. And now he's the guy that picked that terrible accounting software and everybody hates his guts. Maybe he picks the wrong accounting software. They go ahead and buy it and they flunk the audit. That's bad for the whole company. Maybe he doesn't get his promotion that he's supposed to get. Heck, he might even get fired. What is the easiest, lowest risk decision for a buyer to make in this situation? It's to simply go to his boss and say, you know what? Now's not a good time. Now's not a good time. We're in the middle of the audit. We got lots of stuff on our plate right now. You know, like it's not that we love the old thing. It's okay. But now's not a good time to make a switch or whatever. Let's just delay it. We'll kick it down the can a year from now or whatever. And Joey's hoping that next time when the VP comes in, they pick somebody else that isn't him to make this decision. You might not think this happens very often. In fact, this happens all the time. In fact, this is actually our fiercest competition in B2B tech. So the research on this is terrifying. So the research shows that in B2B, 40 to 60% of B2B purchase processes ends in no decision. And when you scratch down at that data, the no decision isn't that they decided that they looked at everything and decided that the status quo was better and they would just stick with their status quo thing. It's actually what's happening is they looked at all their options. They could not figure out how to confidently make a decision that wasn't going to get them in trouble. And so they simply pulled back and decided, you know what, this is too much risk. This is too hard. I don't know how to make this decision and not have any blowback. I'm just going to do nothing. I'm going to come back to Toilet Town just for a second, because it's actually not the end of my toilet story. So what actually happened is I went back to my house and I went to the contractor and I said, look, I decided I'm too busy and I'm just going to keep the current toilet. And he looks at me like I'm crazy. And he says, what are you talking about, lady? Like we got rid of the old toilet. It's gone to we recycled it. It's gone to the big bathroom in the sky. You can't keep it. You have to go find yourself another toilet. And I said, oh, great. So I had to go back to the toilet store. I go back in and I meet this guy. His name is Lou. It's a joke. Nobody gets my toilet guy joke. Anyways, all right. So I meet this guy and I say, he comes up and he says, can I help you? And I said, yeah, you can, buddy. This is a toilet emergency. I can't leave here without a toilet. And he says, oh yeah, toilets are actually really hard to buy, aren't they? And I said, yeah, like this whole process, man, it's been shit. And he said, we don't use that word here, ma'am. It's solid waste. And I said, yeah, it's been solid waste, buddy. Just sell me the toilet. He said, look, I'm going to teach you how to buy a toilet. I could teach you how to do it. And I said, okay, teach me toilet, Obi-Wan. How do I do it? He says, look, there's only 3 things you got to worry about in toilets: quality, aesthetics, space. I said, really? He says, yeah. See, like all these ones over here, they cost a couple $100, and all these ones over here, like 1,000 and more. It's just a quality thing. All those features you've been looking at, flappers and trapways and stuff, these ones are lower quality, so they last fewer flushes. These ones are higher quality, so you can flush them all day and you never have to call the plumber. And I'm like, who buys a low quality toilet? And he said, well, a lot of times you have a toilet in a spare bedroom or a toilet in the basement or a toilet in a vacation property, hardly ever gets flushed. You would be stupid to buy one of these high quality ones. You just buy one of these and be fine. I said, oh, I never thought about that. Okay, fine. Well, this is the main bathroom, so forget about these low quality toilets. So we just eliminated half the toilets right there. And I said, great. And then he says, okay, second thing is aesthetics. Some people got a certain look they're going for in their bathroom. They want a really modern toilet. They want a gold toilet or something. And so you're going to pay more for those if you have a certain look you're going for. And I said, look, I don't have any toilet fashion requirements here, so let's eliminate those. Okay, fine. So we eliminate all those. Now we're getting somewhere. And then the last thing is space. Some people have a really small spot for their bathroom. So they have these toilets where you can put the tank in the wall. And so that saves a lot of space. The bad news is if the toilet breaks or something goes wrong, you got to bust out the wall to get in there and fix it. And I said, well, I got kind of a big bathroom, so I don't want to bust the wall. So let's go with the regular out of the wall toilets. And great, now we're down to 3 toilets. I'm like, this is amazing. Which one should I pick? And he says, look, I got to come clean with you. I actually work for Toto, so I'm going to tell you to pick the Toto one. But any of these are fine. And if you go and Google on the internet, it'll tell you the Total one's slightly better quality and people really love it. It gets better reviews. If you just want to buy a toilet and never think about toilets again, you should just buy that one. And I said, great, put down my credit card, bought the toilet. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. What happened there? Was that guy being pushy salesperson trying to get me to buy a certain toilet? Nope. No, he wasn't. Was he giving me a product walkthrough and showing me every single feature of the toilet that he wanted me to buy? No, he wasn't doing that either. In fact, he wasn't actually acting like what we typically think of as a salesperson. He was acting more like a guide. What he was doing is teaching me how to take the world of toilets and divide it up according to things that are important to me and make my own decision with a very high degree of confidence. So, could we do that? Should we do that in software? Now, a lot of companies that I talk to say, well, look, we can't do this in software for two reasons. One, we can't talk about the competition. That people won't like that. They'll think that we're bashing the competition if we start talking about it. And so that's bad. And the second thing is no one's going to believe us because we're biased. But it turns out the research shows that we're wrong about that too. So this is some research from a big survey of B2B software purchasers, and they asked them, what do you want in a sales conversation? And the top two things that they wanted were, first, perspectives on the market, not you, the market, the whole market. And secondly, help me navigate alternatives. So we're in there trying to answer the question for customers, why pick us? But the question they actually have is, why pick us over the alternatives? So can we build a better sales story that helps us do that? I think we can. So this is what the rest of this talk is going to be about. Like, how do we actually do that? So in my opinion, a good pitch starts with good positioning. If we want to answer the question, why pick us over the other guys? That question is answered in our positioning. So if you've ever read any of my stuff or read my first book called Obviously Awesome, I wrote a whole book about how to do positioning. Positioning is composed of 5 component pieces. It defines who's our competition, what have we got capabilities-wise that's different than the competition, and then what is the value that we can deliver to customers that no one else can? Fourthly, what kind of customers actually care a lot about our value? So what's our definition of a best fit customer look like? And lastly, what's the market we intend to win? If we get really tight definition of that, all we got to do is take that stuff and map it to a sales pitch. And that's going to help customers answer the question they actually come to us for. So if you look at, and this is true in the work that I've been doing with companies, most great positioning doesn't actually survive the jump to sales. So you have your marketing team is all stressed out about messaging and how do we talk about stuff and how do we express the value of what we do. And then you see what's going on in a typical sales pitch with a SaaS company. And there's none of that. There's no attempt to position anything. We're just showing them the product. And then we're like, you make up your mind. You decide whether this is different and better than the other stuff. You decide how we're positioned. And I don't think that's the best way to do it. What we actually want to do is take that positioning and translate it into a sales pitch. So here's the structure that I think works. In my sales pitch structure, there are 2 pieces. There is a setup and there is a follow through. The setup is where we're talking about the market and positioning ourselves amongst other alternatives in the market. The follow through is all about our value that's differentiated. So what can we deliver for a customer that no one else can? The setup has 3 pieces. It consists of 1, our insight into the market. So how do we look at the market differently than our competitors do? Secondly, the pros and cons of the other alternative ways of solving the problem. And then lastly, we get alignment with the customer on this is what a perfect solution would look like. And then assuming we've got that alignment, then we switch gears and we just basically talking about our differentiated value, which is how do we deliver on a solution like that, the perfect solution that we just defined. Let me give you an example of that because it makes a lot more sense if I give you an example. So here's a company I did some work with. They're called Help Scout. They're in the customer success market. So think Zendesk, for example. So this company was founded by a couple of guys, and they had been working with e-commerce businesses, and they were looking at the way e-commerce businesses do support. And they had this idea, like, you know what, like support in e-commerce is actually really different than support in a lot of other businesses. So if you're an e-commerce business, you don't have stores, you don't have salespeople. So support is one of the few places where you actually get to interact with customers live. And so what they've decided, or what they observed, was that in a for customer service in an e-commerce business, support is actually a place where you can really drive some growth. If you deliver an amazing experience, you develop loyalty with the customer is more likely to buy repeatedly. There's a whole bunch of data that supports this. So they built a customer success platform that's really focused on delivering an amazing customer experience. So if you look at their competitors, they basically fall into two camps. Either the companies are using a shared inbox. Most small e-commerce businesses start with that. We'll just have a support email address. There's a shared inbox. Everybody uses that, and that's how we're going to do support. If the business is growing, however, eventually you wanted more advanced support features, like you want to be able to do assignments and prioritization and things like that. So when the company outgrows a shared inbox, they typically end up with typical help desk software like Zendesk. The problem with that software is it's not really designed to deliver a great customer experience. That software was basically designed with the idea that customer support's a cost center. So they're trying to drive the cost down in customer support. So you get assigned a ticket number. You're not a person anymore. They're trying to drive you to the FAQ or automated channels. They're just trying to get you off the phone as fast as possible because they're trying to drive down support costs. Pretty different philosophy from Help Scout. Okay, so that's the background. That's the positioning. Now, here's the way a typical product walkthrough would look like if we were talking about Help Scout. So the customer comes in, maybe they're using a shared inbox. They're thinking about maybe doing help desk software. They come in, and the help desk and the Help Scout rep would be like, oh, hey, great, glad you're here. I'm going to give you the product walkthrough. Here's how you get started. Here's how you log in. Here's the shared inbox. This is how this works across channels. This is how you do assignments and prioritization. We have workflows, we have integrations, blah, 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 blah. And I'll keep going until I run out of features to talk about. Now, imagine I'm the customer. Does that actually answer my question? Why should I choose Help Scout? Not really. Like, it kind of looks like a shared inbox, which is what we're using right now, but it has a bunch of features like assignments and prioritization. But Zendesk has those features too. So how is this different than Zendesk? Or how is this really different from my shared inbox? It's not entirely clear. So let's do the pitch in a different way. Let's use my way. So my way, we start with the insight. The insight goes like this. Hey, hi, customer. I'm going to show you the demo. But before we get to the demo, we've noticed we work generally with e-commerce businesses like you. And what we've seen about e-commerce businesses is that customer service is a growth driver and not a cost center. And they have a couple of slides that are really nice that show, a great customer experience can increase loyalty this much. It can increase repeat buying. There's good research around this. So they have this little chat. So it's a growth driver, not a cost center. And most e-commerce businesses say, yeah, like we see it that way as well. Okay, great. So you have choices how you do customer success. You could use a shared inbox. Most of the folks we work with start with a shared inbox, and it's great because it's easy. It's really easy for your reps to get started on it. It's really easy to use. The downside, though, is that it doesn't have these customer service features. So if you grow, eventually you're going to want to do prioritizations, assignments, all this other stuff. And so then you're going to have to migrate everybody off of that onto help desk software, which is really the only other choice. The problem with help desk software is, one, it's not that easy to use anymore. Like, the good thing is it has all the bells and whistles, assignments, prioritization, all the things you want to do, it does that. Bad news is not so easy to use. So your folks are going to have to get training on that. And a bigger thing is, like, they weren't designed to deliver an amazing experience. So the focus is on cost reduction. They're going to give your customers a ticket number. Everything's set up to try to drive them to low cost channels. So in a perfect world, wouldn't we want a solution that was, one, as easy to use as a shared inbox, two, had all the advanced features so we'd never have to grow out of it, and three, delivered an amazing customer experience, like was designed from the ground up to deliver an amazing customer experience, because we know that's important for driving growth. We want that, right? Now, this is a moment in the sales pitch. If the customer is with me on this and they're like, yeah, right, we want that. Now we switch gears and we pitch Help Scout. Now, see what I did there? Like, we're the only one that can meet that perfect world. If the customer looks across at me and says, yeah, we want that, all I got to do is show how we do it. The deal is mine to lose at this point. So then I go over and say, okay, so let's talk about those three things. First of all, let me show you the demo. Okay, we bring it up. All right, first of all, easy to use as an inbox. Look, there's a shared inbox. Get started in minutes. It's so easy. Ooh, everybody loves it. Second thing, advanced features, so you never have to grow out. Here's how we do workflow. Here's how we do integration. Here's how we do prioritization. All that advanced stuff does all the fancy things that you needed to do. And then lastly, we deliver an amazing customer experience. Your customer, John, is going to get to be John, not ticket 14987. Customers get to choose the channel that they want to interact with you. If they want to do chat, we'll let them do chat. If we want to do email, we're going to let them do email, anything to do. So do you see the difference between the previous pitch and this pitch? This pitch is designed from the ground up to answer the question, why pick us over the other alternatives you had? Did I bash the competition when I did that? No. I actually didn't even say the name of my competition. I put them in buckets, and I contrasted the way we approach the problem to the way other vendors might approach the problem. In the pitch, I'm not competing against companies. I'm competing against approaches. So the sales pitch structure looks like this. Do I have time? I'll do one more. Oh, I wrote some books. If you want to do positioning stuff, you buy the orange one. If you want to learn how to take that positioning and translate it to a sales pitch, you buy the yellow one. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to do one more example and then we'll take questions. So here's another example just to drive this home. So this is a company I worked with here in Toronto. Called Level Jump. They're a good example because they recently got acquired by Salesforce, and so nobody's going to complain if I do a bad job pitching their stuff here. So, so what they have is sales enablement software. So think software to help you get your reps trained. That's their jam. And so they typically compete with. It's a terrible market. It's really, really crowded. Lots of solutions in the market. All the competitors, though, fall into two buckets. They're either a CMS, a content management system, where you just put the sales material on in this system and it makes sure that it does version control and everybody's getting the right version of the stuff. Or you could buy an LMS or learning management system. So I set up courses, I force the reps to do these courses, and then I can see who's done what, and I can certify people and all that stuff. So Level Jump's just like that. The only thing they have that's different really is they're the only solution that is built on top of Salesforce. Everybody else is built separate from Salesforce. So you might say, well, so what for that? What's the value of that? Well, the value is because they're built on top of Salesforce, they can tap into Salesforce metrics. Because they can tap into Salesforce metrics, I can actually show this training drove these results over in sales. So I can map things like time to make quota, time to get to first deal, things like that. So I can actually, the value of this is I can actually measure the results of the sales enablement. So again, let's look at the feature pitch versus the good pitch. So here's the feature pitch. And this is how they were pitching it before we worked together on this stuff. So you log in, here's how we log in, here's how we set up the training, here's how the reps access the training, here's a bunch of features we have, features, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end, they would be like, oh yeah, here's how we track the results. Does this really tell us why pick us versus the 9,000 other sales enablement things out on the market? Not really. Here's the way you would do it with mine. So I'm sitting across from the head of sales enablement at a fast growing tech company. So I'm like, hey, sales enablement, head of sales enablement's important, right? Yeah, right. That's why I do it. That's my job. Yeah. Why is it important? It's important because every day your reps aren't making money, or every day your reps aren't fully enabled, costs you money. Every day they're not making quota costs you money. And they got a great study that shows exactly how much money, but a lot of money. Now you have choices. Most companies start by just putting stuff on a shared drive, and that's okay. It's easy, it's free. But if you got a lot of reps, you're going to outgrow that pretty soon. And then there's lots of solutions on the market, but they literally bucket into two approaches. Either it's a CMS, a content management system, and that's great for making sure that everybody has access to the right version of the stuff. But I can't design courses with that, and I can't measure the impact of that. The last one is an LMS, a learning management system. Again, this is great. I can set up courses. I can see who's done what training, but none of these things allows me to measure the impact of that training with sales metrics. So like in a perfect world, wouldn't we want a solution that would show we did this enablement and here's was the result in terms of shortening the time to first deal, shortening the time to make quota. And especially you, the head of sales enablement, could then go to your boss and show your boss the impact of your work. We want that, right? Now, again, the customer's either with me or they're not. But I mean, what kind of head of sales enablement would not be with me at this point? If the customer says, yeah, we want that, well, now I got them. I'm the only one that can do that. So then I switch into the actual value proposition stuff. So I can measure the impact of sales enablement with sales metrics. Notice how I skip all that stuff that's the same as all the other vendors in the market. Why even talk about that stuff? We're all equivalent. I'm just going to focus in on the stuff that's differentiated value. So here's how you measure the impact of enablement. So I can track time to make quota, time to make first deal. And then because I can see what's working and what isn't working, I can take that information and put it back into my sales enablement programs to improve them. So it's a totally different way of pitching. So again, this is what pitch looks like. Couple of quick things. If you're going to do this, you can't just have the marketing department do it. Like this needs to actually be a bit of a cross-functional exercise. Sales absolutely needs to be involved. If you're going to build a new pitch, I recommend you try it with one rep first, train the rep, do a bunch of example pitches with one rep. And then once that rep is comfortable and we feel like it's working, then we take that one rep and have them teach the rest of the reps and start trying to have all the reps do it simultaneously. If the pitch doesn't work, it's usually not that your pitch is bad. It's usually the positioning is bad. So you need to go all the way back to the positioning and make sure you're super tight on what is my differentiated value. And the pitch shouldn't change unless something happens that the positioning should change. That's it. That's my website. I'm going to stop sharing so I can look you in the eyeballs. Maybe. I guess I can't look you in the eyeballs.
You can
but
just
here we are.
April, but there are
We're back. I look you in the eye, Alicia.
Yeah, there are lots of people and there's been lots of engagement in the chat while you've been talking. So thanks so much for
sorry, I can't talk and read the chat at the same time. But yeah,
all good. I've been keeping an eyeball on it. So I've grabbed some of the questions from there and the pre-submitted questions. So I'd love to jump into some Q&A. I feel like that was also a master class in storytelling and bringing those examples to life. So thank you for sharing that with us. So I think the questions that came through before were both a split between positioning and sales, so covering sort of both of your books. And I think you touched on sort of the importance just then of getting the positioning right before you try to structure the sales pitch. So I think hopefully it's relevant to everyone here. We had one question coming from Andrew on the chat around positioning, which I'll jump into first because that was just on the chat just then. Do you feel there are nuances in framing how you frame this process between single products and a multi-product company, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, with a single product company, things are quite easy because we have one product and one company. So the company positioning and the product positioning is the same. It's kind of like if you think about Slack pre-acquisition by Salesforce, there was Slack the company, Slack the product. It was the same thing. We didn't have different positioning for the two things. The minute you add other products, though, then you have choices to make. And so the most common choice is the positioning of the company now becomes this umbrella positioning across all the products. And so you say, well, you want to work with us as a business. Like when I was at IBM, we'd say, look, you want to work with IBM because we're the only company that has hardware, software, services together. And here's the value of that. And then we could cascade down from there. Like I'm in the software group, that you say, well, why do we want to buy software from IBM? Well, we have 5 brands in there, but this is why. And then we would have our particular product positioning and it would cascade down underneath that. Sometimes companies do tricky things though. Like sometimes like Salesforce for a long time had a lot of products, but the lead product was the CRM. So if they were running ads or anything else, it was all the ads were Salesforce is the #1 CRM. Like they never talked about anything else because it was so easy to sell you the CRM. And then once you had the CRM, then they would worry about selling you everything else, cross sell, upsell. So sometimes you have that where the positioning of the company is much more associated with the lead product. Or you have what Salesforce is attempting to do today, which is this customer 360 thing. And it's all the things, including Slack and Tableau and whatever. And, and they're trying to do this thing where this is all like one platform almost. And everything works together. And we're trying to sell you everything all at once. So every company's a little bit different. But usually if you've got multiple products, there's a company positioning that spans the products, and then the product positioning kind of tucks in underneath.
Andrew's just written in the chat that it's ironic because he actually works at Salesforce, the person that submitted that.
Oh, you work at Salesforce. Oh, sorry, Andrew. Yeah, like from the outside, I'll just say this, whether this is true or not. From the outside, it looks as though they are very much wrestling with that, because I've seen iterations on the way they draw that customer 360 diagram and things like that. And they should call me, because in my opinion, there's a lot of things that could be done better with that positioning to help differentiate between things that are what I would say traditional CRM platform stuff like Sales Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Service Cloud, versus things that are an overlay across those like Slack and Tableau and whatever the other things, MuleSoft. And so I think right now they're treating them all as the same, and that is confusing.
We also had a few questions.
That's my pitch to Salesforce, Flowers and Bees. Hire me, you guys.
Contact a rule.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I want that project to be so hard, but there is, like, you can see it's a real shift from what they've been doing previously. So it's clear that there's people inside the company doing some work on that.
And maybe go from one extreme, tech behemoths right through to the very early stage companies. I've got some people on the line who are, pre-incorporation potentially.
Right.
We had some questions come through beforehand around positioning. One from Michael around the best approach to positioning for early stage businesses who by your definition are too early in their life to nail their positioning. And then there was one semi-related question coming through from Mike in the chat when you were presenting around. He just made a comment that he often feels like there are no other products that he's competing with because our category is so new. So either a company's very early trying to get their positioning right, or the space in the area that you're emerging in hasn't yet evolved, that you've got this set of competitors that you can do that positioning. So how to think about that
okay, so there's a bunch of things there. So let's start with the early stage guys. So if you're super early stage, like let's say you haven't launched yet, or you've launched, you got a couple of customers, but you're not really in market yet. At that point, I think what you've got is hopefully a positioning thesis. And the thesis is, we think this is who we compete with. We think this is how we're different. We think this is the value that only we can deliver. Therefore, these are the customers that love us. Therefore, this is the market we're going to go win. But we don't know. It's a thesis. Maybe we did customer discovery beforehand, and so I think there's actually a risk to trying to over tighten the positioning too early when you don't know the answers to those questions. I think you have the good thing to do is have the thesis, write it down, and we use it internally. But when we launch, we can keep the positioning kind of loose. So this is my bad analogy that I use for this situation, but it's the only one I got. So let's say you decided your big invention is a fishing net, and the fishing net is designed to catch tuna. So you made the world's greatest tuna fishing net. But you don't know, does it work or not? I don't know, because I haven't sold any yet. And so you could launch it as the tuna fishing net, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. A smarter way to do it, I think, would be internally. We're thinking about it, the tuna fishing net, but when we launch it externally, we're like, you know what? It's a net for fish, all kinds of big fish, man. I don't know. And we go out and we get a bunch of people trying it, and then let the fishermen throw it out there and let's see what we pull up. And maybe what happens is, we pull up a lot of grouper, and then we're like, whoa, we weren't thinking about grouper, but now we know that. And so we can tighten it up and say, this is actually the world's greatest grouper fishing net. And I'm going to go after the grouper people because I know I can get them, and I'll wait and get tuna next year or the year after. So I wouldn't over tighten the positioning. I would keep it kind of loose. The second thing is, okay, so that's that question. The other thing is there's this idea like, oh, we're so new and fancy that we have no competition because this is an emerging market and blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. If the problem exists in the market right now, your customers are solving it in some way. They might not be doing it with software. They might be doing it with software that wasn't built for that purpose. So maybe they're solving it with a spreadsheet. Maybe they're solving it with pen and paper. Maybe they're solving it with interns. And so you still have competition. You're still going to lose 50% of your deals to do nothing. You're not just going to win everything because you don't have any competition. That's not how it works. There's alternate ways of solving the problem. So you just need to be clear on what that competition is and position yourself against that. The second thing is that, well, I was going to say something else and then I forgot what it was. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
We'll probably come back to you in the next question. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you're always competing against something, and that might be the status
You're
quo.
always competing
Might
against
be Excel
something.
documents. It's yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say. Sometimes what you have, if it's truly an emerging market, which often companies come to me and they say they're creating a new category, do something that's really, and it's actually not a new category. It's a subcategory inside of a bigger category, but that's a whole different question. But let's say it truly is a new category, like it's a brand new thing. Nobody's ever seen it. It's like a flu flummer. We got a flu flummer and it's totally, and everyone's like, what is a flu flummer? You might have the situation where it's so new that people don't even know they have the problem. And so if you are in that situation, your marketing challenge is not to market your solution. The marketing challenge is to market the problem. Because until people are aware that they have a problem, they don't know they need a solution for it. And so if it's truly an emerging category, people are not problem aware. Because if they were problem aware, then there would be a category of solutions to solve that problem. So that is one of the big challenges there is you're not actually evangelizing your stuff. You're evangelizing the problem. And then, and then hoping that folks wake up to the problem. And then you say, oh, yeah, now you know you got the problem. We have the solution and we're better than everybody else. And so once a sufficient enough a number of people in the market wake up to the problem, then what happens is a market emerges. And so all of a sudden, you're going to get fast follower competitors pop into the market because if enough people are problem aware, then that starts looking like a good market to build software around. And so you're going to have to hustle to make sure you're ahead of all those other people that are going to pile in and benefit from all the work you've done to actually create that market.
There's another question that's come through in the chat from Arnie, but also a number of different ways that was submitted pre the session as well. So Tim submitted a question around, as your product and company rapidly evolves, majority of people on this call are in very early stage businesses. How do you manage evolving the positioning? And then Arnie's sort of question around that was, how often should you revisit positioning? And then that would obviously flow through to your sales pitch.
Yeah. So most folks, in tech, it's quite common that our positioning changes a lot. And in fact, most of the time in a tech company, we're selling the investors on this thing that we're going to be 10 years from now. But the thing we're doing right now is actually really different. And most of us will have some kind of a roadmap that says, okay, we're going to be this, and then we're going to be this, and then we're going to be this, and then we're going to be the all singing, all dancing thing we sold to the investors. So usually that change is built into our strategy. So it depends on how rapidly we're moving along. Sometimes our positioning has to change because of forces beyond our control. So we have positioning that changes because our own product is changing. So we're building things to our roadmap. So we may be, this year we're only focusing on investment banks, but next year we have a bunch of new functionality, and that's going to allow us to get to retail banks. So the positioning is going to have to change for that. And then later we'll have new functionality so we can go after insurance, and the positioning will change there. So that's one reason our positioning needs to change. Our positioning may also need to change because we have competitors that are catching up to us. So something that was differentiated last year, clearly differentiated last year, this year is parity. And so we may need to adjust for that. Sometimes we have mergers and acquisitions or things happen in the thing. And then sometimes we have just macroeconomic crap hits the fan. And last year, everybody was growing like crazy, but this year we're in lockdown and nobody's spending. And so last year we had value propositions around make more money and drive growth faster. This year, the value proposition needs to be around saving money and doing more with less, because that's what all our customers are doing. So we don't know how it's going to change. When I was a VP marketing working in-house, I would have a check-in meeting every 6 months with a cross-functional team to look at the positioning, so twice a year. And we would get sales, marketing, product, the CEO together in a room, and we would do a speed run of the positioning exercise. And we'd be like, okay, has anything changed in the competitive landscape from 6 months ago? Are we losing deals to folks we didn't lose deals to 6 months ago? And so is that different? Are our differentiated capabilities the same, or have we released new stuff, or have we got competitors that have caught up to us? Therefore, is our differentiated value different? If the differentiated value doesn't need to change, then we don't have to change the positioning and we don't have to change the sales pitch. If it does need to change, then we need to go back to square one, redo the positioning, and then redo the sales pitch that matches that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing is, so I do it every 6 months, but we would call an emergency meeting if, crap happened. Like I worked at one company and we had this great position. It was working really good, but it was really tied to MySQL. And it worked for about 4 or 5 months. And then MySQL got acquired by Sun. And we're like, oh no. So we had to have the emergency positioning meeting and rejigger the positioning. And then that worked really good for about 6 months or something. And then Sun got acquired by Oracle. And then Oracle made a lot of noises about doing bad things to MySQL. So we had to completely separate the positioning from MySQL completely. So we did 3 repositioning in 18 months, which was a lot. I have other ones where we've done the positioning and it's ran out for 20 years and we never actually changed it. But so you don't know. I think the best thing is to have a regular check-in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There was a question submitted before the session from Kaylee. I feel like you addressed this a little bit at the end in terms of when you're talking about starting with one sales rep testing the narrative. But the question that was submitted was, what's the best way to get buy-in for changing the sales pitch from the sales team and the CEO?
Yeah, so I think that sales pitch comes from your positioning. I don't think positioning is a marketing exercise. I think that is best done with a cross-functional team. So I got sales, marketing, the CEO, product, everybody's in the room together and we work through the positioning. And then once we have that positioning, that same cross-functional team works on the sales pitch that reflects that positioning. So I have built-in buy-in if I've done this in a cross-functional team. Of course, I got to convince everybody to actually come to the meeting to do the exercise together. Generally, how I would do that is I would hang out with sales. If the positioning is weak, you can hear it in sales calls. So you'll see customers that'll be like, back up, what is that again? I don't know. And they'll have a hard time getting their heads around what is the product. Or they'll say, hey, I know what you do. You're just like Salesforce and you're nothing like Salesforce. So they're comparing you to things they shouldn't compare you to. Or they say, oh yeah, I get the value. I just don't get why anybody would pay for that. And you're like, oh boy, they actually don't understand the value. So if you're hearing things like that, then it's causing pain in sales. I should be able to convince sales that it's worth spending some time looking at the positioning. And then I can go to the CEO and say, look, I'm hearing this over in sales. And it's a lot easier if it's me and the head of sales coming to the CEO than just me, the brand new head of marketing, coming in and saying, I don't know nothing, but I think the positioning's weak. I'm likely not going to get buy-in for that. So if I get that cross-functional team together, then I have built-in buy-in. We should never be building a sales pitch without sales management involved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think when you tactically roll it out is sort of what you touched on before, which is like you iterate.
We shouldn't just heave it over to everybody. Yeah. Like one of the things people don't understand is how hard it is on reps when you change the pitch. Reps get very comfortable with the pitch. It's like it's like public speaking. I got my little spiel, I got my story I tell, here's my little joke I work in here, all this stuff. And reps are exactly the same. So if you show up with a new pitch and say, oh, hey, new pitch, they might say, oh, yeah, I'll give it a try, but they hate that new pitch. Even if they don't like the existing pitch, they're comfortable with the existing pitch. So the best way to get it adopted is pull your best rep, the rep that all the other reps respect, force them to work with the new pitch until they're comfortable with it, test it on prospects. And then when that rep says, yep, you know what, this pitch is better than the old pitch, Then we get that rep to go train everybody else or help us train everybody else. And then you can have the best rep standing in front of all the other reps and say, you know what, this pitch is better. See these deals in the pipeline? I got those cooking with this new pitch. You're crazy to use the old pitch. New pitch is way better. You're going to have more success than that with that than having marketing heave it over the wall and say, do what I say because I made this pitch. Like that's never worked for me ever, even once.
We had another question come through from Sarah Jane. I'll read it out to you. It's in the chat. I've done a lot of positioning work with startups and successfully used April's 5-step framework for B2B and consumer brands, and it's worked really well for both. But I've seen April say that B2B and consumer should be treated very differently. Would love to know the pitfalls of using the framework for consumer brands.
Yeah, actually, it's not exactly what I say. But here's the thing. I built the thing for B2B because that's my background. And so what I tell people when they ask me, does this work for B2C? My answer is, I don't know. It wasn't built for
Sounds
that.
like it does, according to Sarah Jane.
But here's what I think. I think there's a big difference between a considered purchase and an unconsidered purchase. So I think buying something like insurance looks a lot more like B2B than B2C, because you make a short list, you do your research, you weigh your pros and cons. There's other people involved. It's a lot like B2B. Whereas buying a pack of gum is not. Like there's no stakes. There aren't, if you make the wrong choice, nothing bad happens. And so if it's gum or fizzy water or a snack, distribution matters a lot more than positioning in some cases, because you just pick whatever's on the shelf in front of you in the moment. And if you don't like it, no big deal. You just don't pick that one again. And so that's one big difference. So considered versus unconsidered purchase, I think, is really the line. If it's a considered purchase, I think my process works. If it's an unconsidered purchase, I don't know, man. I never tried it. The other thing is that when we're talking about consumer, in B2B, we really only have 3 points of value. It's really only 2 points of value plus an extra. So we're either helping companies make money or we're helping companies save money. That's it. Like, that's all we got. That's the only way you can help a business. You're helping them make money, helping them save money. You got the third one, which is existential risk, right? We're going to make sure you stay in business and you don't go out of business because somebody did something stupid. This is insurance. But in consumer, there is a plethora of value that you can tap into that has nothing to do with making money or saving money. It's like, this thing is going to get you a date. This thing is going to make you look rich, or this thing is going to make you feel cool, or whatever. There's 1,000 different points of value for consumer products, because I don't have to justify it to my boss. I don't have to go to my boss and say, whereas in B2B, if I got to justify it to the boss, I got to show how it's making money or saving money. I can't show up to my boss and say, I picked red because red's my color. You'll get fired for that. So I think these things are different.
And actually,
but how they're different, I don't know. Like, you should not. Here's one thing I can tell you for sure. Never take consumer advice from the B2B person, and never take B2B advice from the consumer person, because they're very different.
And actually, related to that point around going to your boss and saying, red's my color, there was a question from Tim in the chat that came through around, how do you think about the sales pitch when the users of a piece of software are not the decision maker on the purchase?
Yeah, so we see a lot of this in product-led growth motions, where we have this free version and the users adopt the free version, but when we go to sell, we're coming in over top, and the buyer is actually in management. So here's a thing to think about. In B2B, people talk about there being buying committees. This actually drives me crazy when people say that. It is generally not a committee. It is generally, there is a person who is the champion of the deal. That persona has been tasked with going around, making a short list, and then making sure all the other personas, end users, IT, legal, purchasing, security, whoever else, their boss, their job is to then get agreement from everybody all around. Sometimes end users have a lot of power in that process. Sometimes they have none. And so you really need to understand that as a vendor, how much power end users have in that process and how much they don't. For some stuff, management is very effective at just pushing it down to end users, whether they like it or not. For other stuff, if end users don't like it, you don't have a deal happening at all, even if the champion is not the end user. From a positioning standpoint, we need to really understand who the positioning is for. So if you have a product like growth motion where there's a free thing for end users, and then you're coming in over top and selling an enterprise deal to a management level buyer, you have positioning for end users for the free thing, and you have positioning for the management level, which is actually probably pretty different. So a company that I've worked with that does this really well is Postman. They have a free version, like 20 million users worldwide. It's bananas. And then they have, 500,000 customers that they've come in over top and then sold them on a completely different value proposition for why they need the entire company using the thing.
I feel like we probably have time for one more question. And there was one, it's a big picture one that was submitted beforehand, before the session, from Georgia, which was, who has the best sales pitch you've seen and why?
Oh, I've seen a lot of good sales pitches, but I think that a really good sales pitch does a really good job of expressing the company's point of view on a market. And not all companies are good at doing that. So I mentioned Postman before. I think they do an amazing job they have this conceptually, they've got this idea about APIs and the way we use APIs. So their software is a platform for developing and delivering APIs. And they have this really great point of view about something that they call the API first world. And they do a really great job of evangelizing that and talking about it is just a completely different way of looking at how we develop APIs and how we get to a point where APIs are amazing and great for our business. So I think they do a very good job of that. And they went from people being very confused about what they did and how it fit in with API gateways and all kinds of other stuff. The API landscape is very messy, and there's lots of vendors doing lots of little piece part things. They came in with this really clean story that says, look, we cannot deliver amazing APIs if we're using 15 different tools to deliver them. And here's why we need to deliver APIs, very high quality APIs, and do that quickly. I think they do an amazing job of that. If you study their stuff, you can't see people's sales pitches from the outside, unfortunately, so you don't know. But I've seen theirs. It's good.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that insight. And on that note, I'm looking at the clock. We're up on time. So let's wrap it there. And I'm sure I can speak for everyone on the line to say that was super, super valuable. So thank you so much for your time and your insights, April. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll share some links around how you can connect with April one-on-one if you'd like to work with her more in depth. But really want to thank everyone for joining this morning. Look out for more content from our Going Global series over the coming weeks and months. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you very much, April.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.